put my head around, and is the camera running at all time?
I just started it.
Just started it.
Mhm.
But it's going to run continuously?
Pretty much, unless
Okay.
you want to take a break.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is your name?
My name is Robert Henry James Linz.
What was your address during the war?
It was 242 Gillick Street, Park Ridge.
Can you tell us about your parents and any sisters or brothers that you had?
Do that again?
Can you tell us about your parents or any sisters or brothers that you had that were living with you?
I had two brothers who were 3 years old, and they were twins. My father came from New Jersey. My mother came from upstate New York. And I was born in Connecticut. My father worked for DuPont, and they transferred him often. And I lived in Philadelphia, Allentown, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, before I got to Park Ridge. I got to Park Ridge at age 6, first grade, and stayed there all the way through college.
So, what were your brothers' names?
My brothers' names were Charles and Thomas.
Did anyone else live with you?
No,
What did your parents do for a living?
my father worked for DuPont. He was the sales manager for one of the divisions.
What is DuPont?
Huh?
What is that?
DuPont?
What do they sell something?
Just about everything. They're one of the, if not the largest chemical manufacturer in the country.
How was your neighborhood when you were growing up? Did you have a lot of friends that you lived nearby?
Still have them. My oldest and best friend is, we met when we were 6 houses away from each other in Park Ridge in first grade, and have maintained a close relationship ever since. And there are a lot of, we have probably every 2 years we have a reunion from 1933 on.
What did you guys do for fun when you were growing
What
up?
did we do for what?
Fun. What did you do for fun?
We were into sports. I was on the football and basketball teams in high school. And it's interesting, Maine at that time was in the Northwest Suburban Conference, athletic conference. And there was an old baseball team. Now, maybe the war had something to do with that, because you had to move baseball teams around from the different locations, and there were no buses available. Parents had to drive them, and that was pretty difficult because gasoline was rationed, and it was hard to get people to drive, and there was just no way to get everybody around. But it was always been a problem that we didn't have baseball. The day the war ended, they started having baseball teams. You have a baseball team. You know, we didn't.
We also have softball. So the country was, so the Depression had just ended. What was the economic situation for your family?
I got to take a personal viewpoint of this because my father had a job all my life, and a lot of people didn't. My father was a self-educated man. He never finished high school, yet he ended up in an executive position with a big company. So that's about it, I guess. If that answers your question.
What were you like as a teenager?
Me?
Yes.
I was 6'4". No, I was interested in sports. I had a girlfriend in high school for 3 years. Same girl. Never married her. I guess I was active. Active in a lot of different ways in sports and in the things of the of high school, things that went on, and we can talk about that later if you'd like to.
Okay. Did you get good grades in school?
Did I what?
Get good grades in school?
I got better grades in college than I did in high school. I wasn't really interested in getting good grades. I was interested in my girlfriend and in the football and basketball team. And the war was on, and anybody that was in high school knew that when they finished high school, they would go into service. So I didn't wait. Myself and 2 other guys. Your school was way out in the country then. We did school, hitchhiked downtown Chicago, and joined the Marine Corps. And we were 17 years old, and you could do that. You had to wait to your 18th birthday. You had to sign up for the draft. And the draft could put you in any service that they wanted to put you in. Well, we didn't want to wait. We were 17, and you could enlist in the services at age 17. And they let us finish high school, but we were officially in the Marine Corps for the last 6 months of high school.
What do you remember about the start of the war? Like, how did you hear about it?
The war?
Mm-hmm.
At that time, this is 1941, there were 2 professional football teams in Chicago. The Bears, who played on the north side, and the Cardinals, who played on the south side. And they played home and home games. So there was no television in those days. So we used the radio to keep up with the games. And on the 7th of December, they scheduled a game, and we were listening to the game, and all of a sudden there was an interruption, and there was a news announcement that the Japanese were bombing Pearl Harbor, which nobody knew which was, but Pearl Harbor is a naval base in the South Pacific. So that's how we learned about it. If I recall correctly, President Roosevelt declared war on Japan the next day. I think it was the next day, I'm not sure. Before that, England and France were at war with Germany and Italy. And America stayed out of it because we still had a bad taste from World War I, where we sent a lot of troops over there and we had a lot of casualties. So that's how I learned about it.
After the start of the war, did anyone besides yourself...
Do that again, please.
After the start of the war, did anyone besides yourself and your family enlist?
Did anyone else? My brothers were both. My 2 older brothers were twins, and one enlisted in the Navy and one enlisted in the Army. And both of them went overseas.
So, gas and food were rationed. So, how did that affect your family?
It affected every family. If you had an automobile, the only way you could get gas was go and register, and they would put a sticker on your windshield, A, B, or C. If you had an A sticker, you got so many gallons, and Z down. Food, your mother would go to buy a steak, and there wouldn't be any steaks. All the food was going into the military. So we had to change your whole diet downward. You didn't have many steaks.
Did you guys plant any vegetable gardens or?
Victory gardens is what they call them. Yeah, we had out behind the garage, we had radishes and tomatoes and strawberries. I can't remember what else. Not everybody had a victory garden, but a lot of people did. For two reasons. One, it was kind of fun, but two, it helped supply the food for the family that you couldn't get at the grocery store. The big grocery chain in those days was A&P. When you guys were born, there was a few A&P stores left in the country, but not many. A&P stood for Atlantic and Pacific, and they were all over the place.
Did you guys raise any, like, chickens or?
No,
No. Did your mom go to work at all?
no.
What was the atmosphere at your high school when the war started? Were there any, like, special clubs that formed or anything like that?
No, I don't believe so. We were too young. First of all, ladies were not drafted and were not really part of the war effort, except in certain areas, nursing and things like that. But what was the question?
Were there, like, any clubs or anything that formed at your school that were specific
No.
to the war? No. What did you and your friends do in high school for fun? Like,
Do that again.
What did you and your friends do in high school for fun? I know you played basketball.
Mostly sports.
So, did you do any volunteer work when you were in high school?
No. These are good questions.
What did you think about the war?
I don't know how to answer that, to tell you the truth, because it was so much a part of your life. Your family, your friends were all involved in the service, and that's all you did on news was take news from overseas and try to translate it back into the local newspapers. No television. That's about it.
So some of your friends enlisted, right? What happened to them?
Didn't lose any, is that what you mean? No. We were young for the war effort, so we didn't go into combat. We were at the very end of the World War II, and we all did different things. I ended up writing a newspaper. Don't ask me why. You did strange things when you were part of the service, and they gave you funny assignments that didn't necessarily mean anything except to keep you busy.
What were some of those funny assignments that they gave
Well,
you?
like working on a newspaper. I had never written anything in my life. They didn't know that. And I ended up writing as a career. I was an advertising writer. But that was the start of my career. And I got to think it was kind of lucky that I did that.
So Maine High School had some assemblies when students were killed in action. Do you remember any of those?
I don't. We had I don't know if we had monthly assemblies or not. We had assemblies. It would be less than monthly, I think. But the subjects of the assemblies were never connected to the war, that I can remember at least.
So, did you sell any bonds for the?
I did not.
Okay. Do you remember going to the airport or the airstrip to go see the plane?
Do that again.
Do you remember anything about going to the airstrip to see the plane that you guys had bought?
Yeah. My very best friend was in charge of the project of buying the plane. And through him, I kept up to it. But everybody, there was one, after the plane was finished, and we were going to give it to the government, everybody went out to the airfield where the plane was, the whole school, to look at it and be photographed with it. And they had a little slogan, after higher and faster, that's the main, no, backwards. Faster and higher, that's the main flyer, is what it was. And that was printed on the front of the plane. Probably is, I don't know.
How did you get to the Douglas plant?
How did I get to what?
Yeah, how did you get to the Douglas plant from school? Did you get bussed over?
Bus.
Okay.
Main school was built between two towns, Park Ridge and Des Plaines. That was between the two of them. And it was out in the middle of nowhere. We had a farm that you could, actually there's pictures in here of the farm someplace, I don't know where. But, kids actually, yeah. Kids actually grew things, and we use them in the cafeteria.
Why don't we hold that up so that the camera, at least so we can look that up later? Can you guys see that?
There, that's,
What page is that? 19?
Yeah, we'll just put that here. Can you guys see that right there? How does that look? Can you see it?
Not really.
Closer? Closer?
Closer.
Yeah.
Oh, up now.
where the farm was, there was now a hospital.
Okay.
Lutheran General, I think it is.
Yeah. What do you remember about VE Day?
VE Day. I don't remember much about it, except it was a major celebration of the war. VE stood for Victory in Europe. And I'm trying to dig up a date. I think the Europe War ended in June of '44. I'm not positive of that. And the Pacific War ended in '45 in August, after we dropped the atomic bombs on the Japanese mainland. And a cruiser, a boat, went up and down the coast of Japan, threatening, taking on any boat, any ship, anybody that would dare come out, and nobody did. So they gave up. And I think that was in August of 1945.
Do you remember any celebrations that you went to for VJ Day?
No, I don't.
You graduated almost the same time as the end of the war. What was your life like after graduation?
My life was what, after?
What was your life like after graduation?
I went to college. For 4 years. Actually, 4.5 years.
Where did you go to college?
I went to a college named James Milliken, which is down in Decatur. Then I went to Northwestern, and then I ended up at Loyola.
What would you like to tell today's generations like us about your experiences?
I think the only thing I can try to do was try to explain actually what happened, war-wise, because that's all we had on our mind was what's going on in the war. Everything in the newspaper was about the war. Everything on the radio was about the war. And it was such a big topic that it just swallowed up everything else.
Do we have any follow-up questions?
Awesome.
Speak as loud as you can for my
All right.
bad ears.
Well, I was just thinking about when you said the war began. Like, recently we had the North Korea crisis. Not really a crisis, but I mean, my friends and I were kind of nervous about that as well, and we just heard about it from overseas because they were, like, threatening to bomb us and stuff. Were you afraid when the war began? Like, were the tensions getting to anybody around you?
No, because the war was on foreign lands. The war was either in Europe or in the South Pacific. And it was not, we were never invaded. And that was fortunate.
So it just felt too far away for
Physically,
it to get
I
you?
was never,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. When you were bored, when you were younger, what would you do besides playing sports? Like,
Well, sports is a pretty good thing. It's pretty active. And I don't think I was ever bored.
never mind. But does your old house, does it still exist on Gillick Street? Because I know that's in...
You know, I'm going to go take a look when I leave here. I thought about that. And I'm going to go knock on the door. No, and tell them that I lived in that house for, I guess, 10 years or more. I forget what. And I've had people do that in the house that we live in now. Knock on the door, strangers, and say, you know, I used to live in this house. Can I come and take a look at my bedroom? And we always said, no, we don't want you above the first floor. We thought that was a little personal. But people did it. So I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
As far as I know, it's still there.
I wrote down the address because I'm going to my friend's house, and I thought I might pass it today. That'd be really interesting to see. All right.
An interesting thing, we have a house in Florida where we spend the winter. And my wife went to the beauty parlor one day, and the lady said, "Oh, you must be new. I haven't had you before." She said, "No. Where are you from?" And my wife said, "Chicago." She said, "Oh, I grew up in Chicago." And my wife said, "Where?" She said, "At Park Ridge." And "Oh, my husband grew up in Park Ridge." "Where?" "On Gillick Street." "I lived on Gillick Street."
Wow.
"Where?" "200. And I lived at 242. It was the same block.
Did you know her?
Well, I knew it after she told my wife.
Wow. All right.
There's only 300 people in the world. You understand that?
Okay. The next one is, you mentioned that gas was rationed and stuff, and you didn't really take cars anywhere. So does that mean you traveled anywhere? Did you go anywhere when you were younger?
Very little. And another thing is, you couldn't buy a new car. They didn't make new cars for the public. All the construction went into the Army, Jeeps and tanks and so forth. So all the car dealers in the country went out of business. And they had to wait until the war ended to get back in business, and the company started manufacturing again.
Then after the war, you could buy the military vehicles for pretty cheap,
Pardon
right?
me?
After the war ended, you could buy the military vehicles for pretty cheap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Jeeps. Okay. For the clubs and sports that you mentioned at high school, like, what kind of other sports did they have? Like, did they have women's sports?
They had girls' sports, They played field hockey. Do girls still play field hockey?
Not at Laney's.
I don't think we have a team.
Girls played field hockey and swimming.
Okay. So they had those old swimsuits and stuff that went down.
No,
Do you have pictures in there?
I was going to show you a picture of those girls. There's a girls swimming
There we go.
team.
Should we bring it?
Yeah, see if you can.
A girl.
How's that?
Yeah, page 72.
Page 72. All right.
Looks good.
And the men had golf and swimming, football and basketball, no baseball.
All right. What year did you join the Marines?
Joined the Marines?
Yeah. What year was that? 44.
Officially, I joined in 1944, way before my birthday, but they let me finish high school. And the day I went down and joined, the Marines called my father, and he had been in World War I in combat in France, and he was furious. He just went crazy, but he got over it.
But in the end, they had to let you go, right? Because you
Yeah.
already signed up. Yeah. Okay. How did you like receive the rations? You had food rations as well, right? Like
Yeah.
food, fuel. What else was there to be rationed?
Outside of food and gasoline, I can't remember much, but there were probably a lot of other things that I was too young to understand or appreciate or know.
Okay. That's it.
You said your
Okay, hold back up. He had to start
You
again.
can start now.
okay. So you said your father was in World War I, and I was wondering if he told you anything about his experiences from
Never.
World War I.
If you ever notice, war veterans never talk about it. Nobody tells them that to. It's just, I don't know why. People who were in combat are reluctant to talk about it. Even if you ask them direct questions, they avoid it.
Could you tell us what dating was like in high school? You said you had a girlfriend for 3 years.
Mhm.
What kind of dates did you go on?
Movies, mostly. And I don't know what high school kids do now, but we weren't drinking in high school. I don't know. I guess some kids do now. We didn't. Movies, mostly.
Did your school have any dances to go
Yeah.
to?
Mm-hmm.
Did you like going to the dances?
Yeah. Sure.
No, that's pretty much all.
Okay.
Just a quick follow-up.
You're easy.
What kind of movie theaters did they have? Was it a
I
drive-in?
gotta-
Was it a drive-in movie theater or
They were
like the
both.
Pickwick?
That's interesting because you've never been to a drive-in.
Actually, I have. There's
Have
one in
you?
Cape Cod. Yeah,
Yeah, I've been to
Oh, okay. Really?
they're fun.
They had drive-throughs. In fact, I worked in one for a while.
So you went to the Pickwick?
Huh?
You went to the Pickwick for movies, or where did you go?
The Pickwick?
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you know about the Pickwick? Is that still in business?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I see all my movies there. Everything else is too expensive.
That was the only movie around. We had to go into Chicago to get other movies. And the only reason to do that was to read the newspaper and see what they were playing. But the Pickwick was, yeah, that's... I'm glad to hear that. I'm going to go take a look at that, see if it's the same.
So where did you work when you were a student?
I worked at I was a caddy for a while, and then I worked at the Park Ridge Country Club on the Greens Committee. We raked the greens and so forth. It's interesting because during the war, we could get jobs because there were no no adults available. And women worked in factories. There was a song called Rosie the Riveter. That was a popular song, but women had to work in factories, not only to get a job, but to fill the jobs and get the work done.
Do you remember how much you got paid?
Wouldn't be very much. I think I got 25. One of the jobs I had was in an ice cream parlor, running the French fry maker. It was like a washing machine, and the inside of it was real rough metal. And you'd throw potatoes in there and take off the skins. And I think I got 25 cents an hour for that, which, is nothing, but in those days it was good pay.
What did you do with any money you made from those jobs?
Took my girlfriend to movies.
Did you bring any of the money home to help?
No, didn't have to. My father was always well paid. I wouldn't have lived in Park Ridge if Park Ridge was fairly expensive. It was always, and I'm trying to remember this, Park Ridge was always compared to Evanston. And they said that the people live in Park Ridge had the price of beer, and the people that lived in Evanston had the price of champagne.
What about like the surrounding towns, like Des
Pardon me?
Plaines? What about the surrounding towns, like Des
I
Plaines?
still can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Sorry. The surrounding towns around here, like Des Plaines and I don't know, Norwich. What did they say about them? Were they smaller back then?
Park Ridge and Des Plaines were about the same size, and they were held together by what do they call it? I'll have to think of it a little bit. Yeah, I'll call you tonight. I can't remember. But they were separated. And in some ways they were rivals. In some ways they melded together. They had to because their kids were going to Maine. And Maine was halfway between Park Ridge and halfway Des Plaines. And they ran buses back and forth for us.
Oh, so they got fuel for the buses, though, right?
Pardon me?
They got a lot of fuel for the buses then. Just going back to the ration. Okay, never mind. I was gonna ask something.
How did you say you got downtown? You said sometimes you'd go downtown to watch movies. How did you get there?
We went a couple of ways. Park Ridge was then, and Des Plaines also was on a railroad, and it was the railroads in those days were not diesels; they were run by steam, and we could ride downtown. I'm going to say for 25 cents from Park Ridge. I'm going to say 25 cents, but I don't know if that's true. We would go on Sunday nights, we would go down for hockey games. And I think we could get in a hockey game for 75 cents and ride a train down and ride a train back. And the men that worked downtown rode the trains also.
I was really curious about this, but do you know anything about the Des Plaines prisoner of war camp?
Des Plaines what?
There was a prisoner of war camp in Des
Yeah,
Plaines.
there was. And they worked out in the fields, and they wore uniforms. You could say who they were. And they did agricultural work. Everybody knew who they were, and they had guards, armed guards. Not many of them, but they had them. I never heard of anybody getting shot or captured. You would see them occasionally, but not very often. They seemed to put them out in areas that weren't very vacated. But there were, I don't know if it was just in Des Plaines. I don't know where they were coming through.
Oh, there were more?
I don't know, I can't remember. But they brought them over from Germany. They were German.
Did you ever get to see them at all, or did you just generally stay away from
No.
them?
You kind of ignored them.
Yeah, like if they're there, but
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
didn't
really
know.
matter. Whatever.
No, nobody ever even talked about them. And I guess after the war, they shipped them back to Germany, I guess. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Most people don't know that.
I didn't know about it until 2 months ago, so.
Yeah. And I can't remember where they lived. They had barracks someplace, I don't know where.
No, there's a place in the, I'm pretty sure it was like where the forest preserve is now. There's like
Really?
yeah, there's like, I don't know, I asked my dad about it. He said there was some place where you can see that, like if you look on Google Maps, you can see the foundations from the satellite and stuff. You can just see where it would be. I'm not sure though.
I'm not sure. That's interesting though, because most people don't know. I think most people didn't know at the time that there were prisoners of war right next door to you, you know. And I don't think they ever escaped. I don't know much about them, to tell you the truth. And I just made little notes, and let me just look at these. We've talked about no automobiles, gasoline, food rationing. We had another thing. I don't know whether you have it today. We had, I'm talking about Maine now, and the whole Northwest Suburban Conference. We had lightweights and heavyweights. We had